We're talking lift pumps today. You can see the pressure as it's just pumping it out. Because I've got a little package here from a customer that has returned a lift pump because he's concerned there is an issue with it. So, first of all, I'm going to explain to you what a lift pump is, because I think that's very important, and it'll help you understand the fuel system a little bit better. Then I'm going to show you how we're going to test it, which is probably more simple than you'd think. Right, so a lift pump basically is to take the fuel from the fuel tank at the back of the vehicle and bring it to the front where your injector pump is. It is obviously different to an injector pump. This could be considered as a higher volume, lower pressure pump than the main injector pump. Let's go over to the GMC and I'll explain where it fits in the system. So unlike a petrol car's lift pump, this is actually mounted at the front of the vehicle. Now, the ideal situation is to always have your lift pump mounted as close to the fuel source as possible, and it's pushing the fuel, and then that doesn't allow air to get sucked in along the way. However, that's not how Mercedes did it, because they wanted to keep everything mechanical. Obviously, you can see this is not a standard Mercedes mechanical injector pump. This is one of my nice billet ones, but the mounting position is exactly the same. So this would normally be mounted on the side there, where that little blank is. And it's driven, this little plunger here, which you can hear, is driven by the camshaft in the pump. So as that camshaft rotates, it sucks at this point from the tank, and then it pressurizes fuel out of this point to the filter head. Right, so basically what we want to make sure of if we're having issues between here and, well, any kind of fuel pressure issues is, first of all, that we're not getting any air pulled into this pump from the tank to here. So that could be a cracked rubber line, it could be the wrong size hose used and you've squeezed it at an oval, like an oval, and it's sucking air in. It could even be a steel fuel pipe that's corroded and it's pulling air in. Many, many things. But a very quick and easy way to just eliminate that is just put a short length of pipe from there into a jerry can, into a small plastic can. Right, so then the route that it takes is it comes out of here, and now this, even though this is one of our billet filter heads, this actually does mimic the same as like a 603, like a cast version. So the arrow in is where this pumps up and into the filter head. The filter is pressurized, which is good. The filter's pressurized. The fuel goes into there, and then it comes back out after it's been filtered, and then into the front of the injector pump. Now, the next very crucial point is that the injector pump has in the back the restrictive return banjo. I can't express enough how important that is. These are very important. They're very small, but very important. This is the inlet banjo, which we're all familiar with, and you can use any inlet banjo from a hydraulic specialist. However, this is much more important. This one, well, it's equally as important in the system, but should I say much more hard to obtain. This has a one-way valve in it, and it has a tiny capillary, and it's this tiny hole that creates the pressure in your pump. So that is fuel flowing into the pump, and that is restricting the fuel flow out of the pump, and this is extremely important. If you are running a mechanical lift pump and you don't have something like this, you're probably going to have problems, because that restrictive banjo holds the pressure inside the pump. Well, between the lift pump outlet and there, everything in between becomes pressurized, and it's important because when the fuel elements inside are going down and the plungers are coming down, to fill them up with fuel, it needs to have some pressure. It needs to push the diesel into a little bit like I suppose like a turbocharger forcing air into an engine. This lift pump is forcing the fuel into the plungers, but it needs some restriction on the backside of it to allow it to fill better. So, with this pump working and the restrictor doing its job as it should, by the way, the correct restrictor banjo with these is just the standard Mercedes one, which I believe has just a 2mm hole in the back of it. It does have a one-way valve inside, but it has no more complex control than that. It's really just the orifice size that creates the restriction. And you should be getting 0.5 bar of pressure with this lift pump inside your injector pump. So you're wondering, how am I going to find out that 0.5 bar? Well, what you need is a fuel input pressure gauge. This is an opportunity for me to exchange knowledge for a little bit of money so I can keep building these things and supplying you with great products. So this is 30 quid. And it comes with a specially machined banjo that will allow you to screw this straight into that port there. It's not so easy if you've got a 2.8 litre Ken Bell supercharger on there, but I'm guessing, and I'd probably be willing to bet a few quid, that you guys at home don't. So I think you're going to be fine. So this simply screws into the side of there, like that, and that'll tell you your fuel input pressure. Now, this gauge is for test purposes only, so it should only be used for short periods. And the reason for that is the shock created by the elements as they go up, and they create like a very hard harmonic sort of resonance through the fuel, and it damages these gauges. So if you're wanting to leave something on for a longer period of time, you know, like just in the engine bay at all times, you're better off with this. It's the exact same gauge, but it's mounted in a pedestal that we've machined. It has two ports in it if you want to have an in and an out, and then it just comes with a nice length of stainless braided line. And it'd also come with a double banjo, so you literally piggyback it onto the back of that inlet port and then mount this, you know, wherever you want in the car, and it gives you a nice mechanical gauge. I'd generally keep it inside the engine bay, and you should be getting 0.5 bar of pressure with this lift pump inside your injector pump. And that on, let's say, an 8.5mm pump, you know, the high-end element, is enough for big power, like 500 horsepower. It isn't on competitors' elements because of the inlet slot, the inlet port is smaller, but they still can be used up to sort of 400 horsepower on other pumps, you know, like our 7.7s and 8s and all them other ones out there. So they are a very capable little thing, and obviously you've got no wiring to do, no solenoids, no switches, no nothing. It just works when the engine works, and it's active as well, because as you accelerate it speeds up, so it's using more power only when it needs to. So it's simple but brilliant. Anyway, now you know what the lift pump does. Let's give it a quick test. Over to the booth. If you just give it a squeeze and have a listen to this, so see how it's making that kind of quacking? If it's doing that, generally it's fine. Now obviously we rebuild these, as you can see clearly, when we send them out. But often people can mistake air getting into the pipe fitting and all kinds of things for the lift pump not working. And to see if this thing works is literally as simple as a little bit of pipe, put it into some diesel, kerosene, anything with the same viscosity as diesel, it doesn't matter, and give it a try. Just squeeze it with your thumb and it should squirt out like that. That is working perfectly. And if you really want to confirm, just put your thumb over it and look, you can see the pressure as it's just pumping it out. That is working absolutely fine. And it is literally as simple as that to test your lift pump. So, customer at home, thanks for sending in your lift pump. There's nothing wrong with it, it's fine. But, just to be extra diligent and make sure that there's no hidden issues, we'll just take it apart and check the O-rings and everything inside. But, as you've sent it, my little test, it seems fine so far. So I think you need to be looking, I think Cameron needs to just have a look at his pipe work to his tank to see if it's pulling any air. It can be literally as silly as the little bit of pipe where it goes onto this fitting here. If it's a loose fit and you've used a Jubilee clip and it's slightly over, if that pipe, when it's crimped up, it just creates a little way for air to get in. As soon as air is introduced into this pump, it's not going to work properly. So yeah, it'll be something along them lines. These things are really good, really robust. Have a look at that and go from there. Thanks.